live. This is another installation of a 4-part workshop where we'll be creating a large-scale live multimedia mixed media piece where I'll be including printmaking as well as other mixed media elements into my collage. Okay, I'm going to jump right in lieu of time because I only have 30 minutes with you today, and I'm going to show you a little bit of what I'm doing this week. And this week we'll be talking about the printmaking aspect. So if you remember last week, we designed some paper. We played with a lot of colors, a lot of textures, bringing a lot of vibrancy and energy into the piece. If you've forgotten or you didn't see last week's video, we are doing an Egungun inspired piece. The Egungun is a West African Yoruba cultural ritual in which these Egungun masquerade dancers perform in honor of the ancestors. It goes a lot deeper than that. I would definitely encourage you to look it up on YouTube. Egungun, Egungun. Look that up because that's the inspiration in terms of the garb and the cultural vibrancy, the colors, the energy that I'll be pulling into this piece. I don't want to talk too much about the piece. I think I'll save that for the artist talk, but let's join right in. We'll start with some basic tools that I'll be using for the carving portion of my relief carving or of my lino cut. I'm just going to start with a few tools here. If you remember, I do use 2 cameras, and so I'm going to be switching about between the 2 cameras, okay? I don't want you to get discombobulated. All right, so here we have 3 different type of lino cutting tools from some really nice quality tools, much smaller. Okay, I have a large hand, so I don't spend a lot of time using this tool. And then I have my trusty power grips right here. The power grips fit my hands better. Okay, they're much larger for my hand. And then I have something that you've probably all seen in your classroom setting. To be honest with you, these are my favorite type of tools, all right? They come in different blades. So you'll have your U gouge. And you can just look at the shape of the gouge at the end, and you're gonna have some V gouge. Just take a look at that shape right there. These type of gouges create different type of cuts, and they come in different sizes depending on how fine or how small of an area you're working in, okay? So now that I've shown you some of the tools, I'm going to show you some different type of linoleum. This right here is Battleship Gray. All right, it's very common. It's pretty hard. You want to keep this room temperature or warmer for an easier carve. All right, this comes in various sizes. Here you have a rubber piece. They're calling it Speedy Cut. Super easy to draw on and carve into. Here's another rubbery piece right here. This one is called Speedy Carve. They're both by Speedball, and they come in different shapes and sizes. Easy to draw on, easy to cut. It's soft. Then we have here Cork, all right, also known as Linoleum. but it has definitely a Cork vibe. You can draw on this. Not as easy to draw on as the Battleship Gray. It also prints different, so you're gonna have to play with these, get the different textures, and get used to how you would work these out, how you would, the amount of pressure you would apply to them, the amount of ink that they take, and so on and so forth. I'm going to show you very quickly some examples of what they look like when they're carved into. Okay, so here's a carved into piece of cork. And here is a carved into piece of Battleship Gray. It's been carved into and used. Of course, it's hand. It's my hand, actually. And so here we have it. I'm going to show you with some darker ink. This again, Battleship Gray. You can tell it's Battleship Gray by the sound. It's pretty hard. And here you have some more Battleship Gray carved in with words. I'm going to talk about these words, and now's the better time than any. So what you see are the words reading in the proper direction, but in reality, these words are backwards. I'm going to attempt to show you that if you would just hold tight 1 second. I'm going to turn the camera so that you can see the truth about carving words. So here are the words, and now you get to see really how they are carved. They're drawn and carved backwards. But when you print, you get the mirror image of these words. And then when you get the mirror image, it's the way that words are supposed to be read, all right, which is left to right. But in this case, I've had to draw them right to left. And I'll show you how I did that. I'm going to switch the cameras so that you can see in a larger scale. Alrighty, so here we are. So I'm going to be doing some pieces in my large scale drawing that have words in them. And the words that I want to bring into my piece are names. And the names are Elijah, Brianna, and Deborah. So there's no easier way to do mirror image than to use tracing paper. You can tell it's tracing paper. You can see that it's you know, translucent, okay? Especially when the light is behind it. So I just drew the words regularly, the names regularly, and then I'm going to flip them and trace them backwards. And so this is the backwards tracing. All right. Remember, it looks like this has got to be wrong. Why are these words backwards? But don't worry. When we get to the inking part, it's going to all come out in a wash that you've done it the right way. Why am I helping you with this? Because I did it wrong. All right. I did it wrong one time, and it's a mistake you really only make once. This was one of my very first carves, and I used some words in it, and I wrote the words just normal as if you were reading them on a piece of paper. When I printed them, the words were backwards. That's why we're taking the tracing paper and we're going through the step of writing the words as we would read them, but flipping them and then drawing them backwards, so that when we ink and flip it back the right way, the words will be written properly, not backwards. It's a thing that is tricky to explain, but explain I must. Now, I learned a trick from a fellow printmaker. Let me show you here. So right here I have some cheap grade acrylic paint. I'm just putting a little bit of water into it, making it watery, as you can see. And then I'm going to take that watery portion and I'm going to paint above my Battleship Gray. I want to give it a different color. Now I used white, so you may not be able to see the difference, but if I bring it close enough, you can see that this is a milky white color, this is gray, all right? You're probably also seeing that my words are backwards. That's exactly what I wanted you to see. I want to show you different ways, essentially, of working with Battleship Gray, all right? So doing the milky paint on this little section and then drawing on top of the dry paint is one way. Just using a regular pencil is one way. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like when I'm doing it with marker. Hold tight. I just want you to see, in case you need marker, so that you can follow the contrast lines. When people are working with their carve, they can use all of these techniques. You can get as detailed in your drawing as possible. You have to work with whatever level that you're able to work with. If you need more contrast between what you're going to carve and the Battleship Gray, then you may be the type of person who would want to use the marker. Okay, so here's the marker, and you can definitely see the contrast. There's no missing lines there. Here it is with pencil, and then here it is with the milky white, or you could use pink, or you could use orange, or you could use red, thin layer of watered down acrylic paint. So I'm going to begin some carving. And if I didn't mention it, I'll mention it again. I like to use these school brand Lino cut carving tools. I just keep the blade super sharp. Now you never want to carve towards yourself. You always want to carve away from yourself. And if you really want to get fancy, you can use this rubber-based glove to protect your other hand. Another tool that's really helpful to use is this blade right here, especially when you want sharp lines. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that right now. I'm going to work on the milky white film. I'm just going to follow the straight edges with my blade. And yes, this is an extra step. Yes, this does take extra time, but I have never once told you that this is a quick process. I personally don't enjoy quick art for myself. I like the experience of taking my time with my work. So I'm just carving the straight lines of the letters I've drawn. And I want you to see how it makes a difference on how your cut comes out in the end. Okay, so I'm going to start with my V blade. Okay, and I'm just going to work on this H. I can go a little thinner with a thinner V blade right here. Now that I did those extra cuts with my knife, I don't have to work as hard. Now you always want to carve away from you. And what that means is that you're not pointing the sharp object towards you, just like when you're working in the kitchen. I'm heavy-handed, so I tend to carve deeper than necessary. It comes with practice. You'll learn what's the right pressure to apply. Not only do you want to carve away from you, but you don't want your hands or your finger like right here. You don't want that, because once it slips, you're gonna get cut. And trust me, we've all gotten cut. But you should try not to get cut. Practicing safety practices when you're carving. So these straight lines are making a big difference. You can see how I'm cutting out that H. Now this is a very manual. You have to have some level of dexterity when you're cutting. Definitely want to take your time. Notice how I keep turning my piece of linoleum. And as you can see, this is very time consuming. The other thing when you're carving, I carved out this section with my V blade right here. Now I can take a wider blade and scoop that out. So I'm going to use this blade right here to scoop that out. When you're using the milky paint or the watered down paint, I would advise you to use a color with more contrast for yourself. For me, this white versus the gray is just fine, but you may want to use red or pink or something of that nature. because the point is to give yourself contrast. It helps you to imagine the print better. And yes, we are still working on just the letter H. And so I hope that this helps you to appreciate the work that goes into printmaking. Yes, we may be able to do multiple prints, but it took a long time to get there. I'm going to use a wider scooper so I can get more out of the way quicker. Don't get too impatient with this. Because there's a lot of work that has to go into repairing linoleum once you've cut away something that you should not have. And that's if you're lucky and you actually can repair it. If you want a super clean print without any lines picking up any ink or any raised parts picking up any ink, then you're going to want to scoop this all out. What do I mean by that? All of these ridges have a propensity to get ink on them. Let me show you what that looks like. Here's a piece that I've previously worked on, and all of these raised pieces have ink on them, and that's intentional. Everything that's raised up to the same surface level as the rest of the image is gonna get ink on it. Anything that's beneath that level is not gonna have ink on it, okay? And you can see that by these white lines having no ink on them. So I'm going to continue to carve this, but I'm not going to do it with you watching. I'm just going to go ahead and pause very quickly in lieu of time. All right, it's about an hour and 15 minutes later, and all of the names are carved out. Okay, so in lieu of time, I'm going to make this a two-part series when it comes to the printmaking part of the large piece. When I come back, you will see that I will have completed all of the printing, and then I'll show you all what it looks like to go ahead and ink the cuts and then apply pressure to pull off the image. So stay tuned. You're going to get 2 episodes this week once I finish printing out all of the other elements of this piece I'm doing. And I think next week I'll show you a preview of what we're working with. All right? So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon.